The cardigan was the thing I couldn't stop looking at. Blue, cable knit, the kind with the loose weave that pills at the elbows. Jenna wore it almost every day because she was always cold and she thought the office AC was calibrated for someone other than her, which she may have been right about. She'd bought it at one of those weekend markets by the river, and I had actually been with her when she bought it, standing there in October in the weak sun while she held it up and said, "Does this make me look like a grandmother?" And I said, "A little bit," and she bought it anyway because it was soft and she was cold. It was on the back of her chair at 8:47 when I came in on Monday morning. Her monitor was running a screensaver, the geometric shapes one, the default. She'd never bothered to change it. The coffee mug that said, "But first coffee," was on her desk, turned slightly to show the lettering, right where she always kept it. Her small succulent was on the corner of the desk, still alive through whatever combination of negligence and luck she'd been operating on for the 6 months since she'd brought it in. And the cardigan was on the chair, folded over the back the way she always left it, sleeves hanging down on either side. She was not there. I sent her a message on Teams at around 8:55. Nothing back. I called her cell at 9:05 and got voicemail, her recorded voice saying her name and asking me to leave a message, the way she said her name with that slight emphasis on the first syllable, Jenna, like it was still a little bit of a surprise to be called that. I left a message that was probably too casual, something like, "Hey, you okay? Give me a ring." I asked Marcus at the desk next to hers, who had been in since 8:15 because Marcus is always in since 8:15, if Jenna had said anything about being out today. Marcus said she hadn't. He said it without looking up from his screen, which was normal for Marcus. At 9:45, I went to find Diane in office management and asked if Jenna had logged an absence. Diane checked the system and said no, nothing logged, which could mean anything. Jenna was sick and hadn't gotten around to it. Jenna had a personal thing. Jenna had a dental appointment she forgot to put in the calendar. These things happen. I went back to my desk and pulled up the content calendar and looked at the items due this week. And there it was, the Henderson account final delivery, Wednesday, and Jenna's name next to mine in the assigned column, because we'd been working on it together for 6 weeks. Okay, I thought, she's sick. She'll message in. She'll send a, "Sorry, I'm out today, raging temperature, can you cover the Henderson thing?" And I'll say, "Of course," and I'll be mildly put out for about 10 minutes. And then I'll cover it because that's what you do. No message came. At 11 o'clock, Diana from HR, not Diane from office management, there are 2 of them, and I've been there 3 years and still have to think about it. Diana from HR came to Jenna's desk. She had that look that HR people have when they are doing a thing they have rehearsed, pleasant and purposeful at the same time, not making eye contact with anyone who wasn't involved. She opened the bottom drawer of Jenna's desk, looked at what was in it, closed it again. She looked at the top of the desk. She picked up the coffee mug, looked at it, set it down. Then she picked up the cardigan from the back of the chair and folded it. And I watched her fold it. 3 folds, neat, the way you'd fold a shirt, and put it in a small cardboard box she'd brought with her. I got up from my desk. I said, "Diana, what's happening?" She looked at me with that expression and said, "Jenna has decided to move on. She submitted her resignation over the weekend." I said, "Over the weekend?" Diana said, "Yes, over the weekend." And her tone had a quality of being gently closed down, built into it. And I recognized the quality, and I stood there for a moment, and then I said, "Okay," and I went back to my desk. I've worked with Jenna for 2 years. We eat lunch together once or twice a week, not always, but often enough that it is a thing we do. I know she never went anywhere without that cardigan because she was always cold. I know she had been excited about the Henderson delivery because she told me 3 times in the last 2 weeks that she thought it was the best work she'd done at the firm and she wanted it to go well. I know she had lunch plans on Tuesday with a friend from her old job who was coming in from Edinburgh, and that she had been looking forward to it for 2 weeks because she mentioned it at lunch last Thursday, and then again on Friday morning when I saw her at the coffee machine. She submitted her resignation over the weekend. She left her cardigan. And I know because I saw it, that when I left on Friday evening at around 6:30, Jenna was at her desk, and Craig Patterson was standing next to her desk, talking to her. And I got in the elevator and I went home. And Craig Patterson has been at his desk since 8:30 this morning, and it is now 11:15, and I have been watching him. Not continuously, not in a way anyone would notice, but enough. And he has not once looked at Jenna's empty desk. Not once. Most people, when a colleague doesn't come in on a Monday with no notice, will glance at their desk at some point. It's automatic. You look at the absence. Craig Patterson has been answering emails and making coffee and laughing at something Marcus said, and he has not looked at her desk once. The way you don't look at something when looking at it would cost you something. Let me go back to Friday. Let me tell you how I got here. It was the kind of Friday that makes the whole week feel worth it. Not because anything exceptional happened, just because nothing went wrong. We hit a milestone on the Henderson account in the afternoon, and someone put Prosecco in the kitchen, and about 14 of us stood around drinking out of paper cups and talking about nothing for 40 minutes, which is about as good as it gets in an office setting. Jenna was there, in the cardigan, holding her paper cup, laughing at something Craig said. Craig was at the center of it the way he usually is. He's good at that, good at pulling a group together, good at making people feel included, which is why HR uses him to manage difficult conversations, and why he has been here 7 years and shows no signs of going anywhere. He told a story about a client dinner that went wrong in 2019, and it was genuinely funny, and we all laughed. That was around 4:30. By 5:30, most people had gone. By 6, the office was down to maybe 8 people, the ones with things to finish. I was one of them. I had a content audit I needed to close out before the weekend. Jenna was another. She was still working on something. I could see her from my desk, typing steadily. Craig was there too, at his desk, which wasn't unusual. Craig often worked late, always had. It was part of his identity in this office, the person who stayed. At 6:25, I packed up my bag. I said goodbye to the 3 or 4 people still in earshot. I walked to the elevator lobby, which is separated from the main office floor by a glass partition, and I pressed the button. While I was waiting, I looked back through the glass the way you do when you're leaving a space, just a reflex, a last look, and I could see the far end of the office, and I could see Jenna's desk, and I could see Jenna sitting at it, and I could see Craig standing next to her desk. He was leaning slightly, one hand on the partition wall beside her monitor, and they were talking. She was looking at her screen, not at him. The elevator came. I got in. I did not think about it again until Monday morning. That is a fact that I have to live with. The week after she disappeared, and yes, I am calling it disappeared because that is what it was. I just didn't let myself use that word until later. The week after she disappeared, I went through a particular sequence of mental gymnastics that I imagine anyone in my position goes through, and that I am now telling you about with the full benefit of hindsight and an ongoing conversation with a detective, which has a clarifying effect on the memory. What I told myself. Jenna resigned because she had a reason I didn't know about. A family situation. A better offer she'd been keeping quiet about because she hadn't been sure it would come through. A falling out with someone above her that I wasn't privy to. These things happen. People resign without telling their work friends everything. Her promotion review was 6 weeks away, but maybe the resignation and the review were related. Maybe she'd had a conversation that told her the review wasn't going to go her way, and she'd decided to leave before it happened to save face. That would explain not telling me. That would explain the cardigan and the project and the timing, because maybe when you make a decision like that, you make it fast, and you don't let yourself think about what you're leaving behind. That was Tuesday. By Thursday, I had found a hole in this explanation and patched it, found another hole and patched that, and was running low on patching material. The hole I kept coming back to was the promotion materials. I told you she sent them to me 3 weeks before she disappeared because she wanted feedback. I had spent 90 minutes on them. They were thorough and specific, and she'd clearly put a lot of work into them, and I'd told her they were more than good enough, and she'd sent back 3 exclamation marks and a party popper emoji. I have that message still. I don't know why I haven't deleted it. The party popper. The 3 exclamation marks. People who are planning to resign in 3 weeks do not react to their promotion materials with party popper emojis, unless they are good actors. And Jenna was not a good actor. She was one of those people who emotes directly onto her face, no filtering mechanism. You always knew exactly where you were with her. People who send party popper emojis do not resign 4 days after they meant to submit those materials without telling anyone why. I keep coming back to the party popper. I cannot explain it away. Then there was Craig. On Thursday, day 4, he took a phone call at his desk at around 2:30 in the afternoon. I noticed it because it was his personal phone, not his work phone, which isn't strange on its own, but his posture changed when he answered it. He turned slightly away from the room, not dramatically, just enough, and his voice went to that particular frequency that people use when they are managing a conversation they don't want to be overheard. Low and controlled. I couldn't hear the words. I could hear the register. I watched the back of his neck for 4 minutes. After he hung up, he sat for a moment without moving, which was also slightly off for Craig, who was a mover, a lean-forward person, always in motion. Then he closed his laptop and put it in his bag, which I had never seen him do in the middle of a workday in 3 years. He stood up and told Marcus he had to step out for a bit. He left. He was gone for 2 hours. When he came back, he was completely normal. He made coffee, he stood by someone else's desk and had a conversation that made that person laugh. He stayed until after 7 and was the last person to leave, which was, as I said, his pattern. Nothing new. I noted the time he left and the time he came back, written in the margin of my paper notebook in the small handwriting I use when I don't want what I'm writing to be legible to someone looking over my shoulder. I don't know when I made the decision to start keeping notes like that. It felt like the decision came after the action. He went somewhere for 2 hours in the middle of a Thursday and came back and was completely normal. I've been sitting with those 2 hours. Either he went for an entirely innocent reason, a doctor's appointment he'd forgotten to put in the calendar, a personal errand, a phone call from a family member that required him to step away, and came back and continued his day. Or he went somewhere for a reason that is not innocent and came back and was completely normal anyway. I've been trying to decide which of those is more frightening. I'm still trying. Day 8 was when everything I'd been trying to explain away stopped being explainable. I was looking for a phone charger in the kitchen. We have a lost and found in there, a small wicker basket on the windowsill that collects the things people leave behind. Charging cables, lip balm, a single glove, the occasional umbrella from someone who never came back to claim it. I went through the basket because I needed a USB-C cable and I thought I remembered seeing one in there last week. I found the cable. It was under a pair of earphones and 3 hair ties and a lip balm that had been in there so long the label was coming off. And underneath the cable in the bottom of the basket was a phone case. Jenna's phone case. I need you to understand how unmistakable it was. She had it custom made. It was a case with a photo on the back, her dog, a small brown terrier named Archie, photographed from slightly below so his face filled the whole back panel, nose forward, looking extremely serious. She'd had about 12 comments about that phone case in the time I'd known her, people stopping her in the corridor to say, "Is that a dog on your phone?" And her saying, "That's Archie," with a very specific pride. There is not another phone case like it in the world. I held it by the edge, some instinct about not covering it with my fingerprints working before the rational part of my brain had fully arrived. I took the compatible charger from the basket. We'd had several USB-C cables donated over the months, and I went to the bathroom. Not the main bathroom off the office floor. The single-occupancy bathroom 1 floor down that people use when they want to be completely alone. I locked the door and I plugged the phone in and I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and I waited. 20 minutes. The phone charged. The screen lit up and asked for a passcode. I couldn't get in. I'm not a hacker, I'm a content strategist, I don't have that skill set. But I didn't need to get in. The lock screen showed the wallpaper. Archie. The same photo as the case for consistency because of course, and the date and time of the last activity. Friday, 9:47 p.m. I sat on the floor of that bathroom and I thought about that for a long time. Jenna was in this building until 9:47 p.m. on a Friday. Her phone that has her dog on the back of it. Her phone she never went anywhere without because she'd lost one phone 2 years ago and had been anxious about it ever since. Her phone with her whole life on it. Her phone is in the office lost and found basket. Her resignation was submitted at 11:23 p.m. from her personal email address to Diana in HR. She has not come back for the phone. I held it for a while with the charger still plugged in. I turned it over and looked at Archie looking up at me with his serious expression. Then I unplugged the charger. Then I put the phone in my bag. I don't know why I put it in my bag instead of going directly to someone. I think I knew that the moment I gave it to someone, I could no longer control what happened to it. And I needed to understand what it meant before I lost the ability to think about it clearly. I needed to be sure. I had been telling myself I was overreacting for 8 days, and I needed to be sure that I was not overreacting. 9:47 p.m. That's when her phone was last used. Her resignation arrived at 11:23 p.m. 96 minutes. I keep thinking about those 96 minutes. About what you do in 96 minutes on a Friday night after 9:47 p.m. About what a person who is resigning from a job does in 96 minutes on a Friday night. About how you leave your cardigan and your coffee mug and your plant and your phone in a lost and found basket, and you submit a resignation from your personal email and then you… what? You go home? You take a cab to the airport? You start a new life with nothing you owned before that moment? I keep not being able to think of something that explains the phone in the basket. I called Priya on my lunch break on day 9. Priya knows Jenna from before. They worked together at an agency 5 years ago. They have maintained a friendship that consists mostly of messages, but occasionally surfaces into real life. Priya is the friend from Edinburgh with the Tuesday lunch plans that Jenna had been looking forward to for 2 weeks. Priya had been trying to reach Jenna since Saturday. Priya had filed a missing persons report on day 6. I didn't know about the report. Priya didn't know I didn't know. We had this conversation in a car park around the corner from my office, standing in the cold, and Priya was scared in the way that a person who has already been scared for 6 days is scared. Not acutely, just deeply. It had settled in. She told me what the police had found when they went to Jenna's apartment. Clothes in the wardrobe. Toiletries in the bathroom. No sign of packing. No sign of preparation for a trip. No sign of the kind of selective clearance you do when you're leaving, and you want to take the specific things that matter. Jenna's building neighbor, the man downstairs who had a spare key, had been asked on Thursday evening if he could look in on Archie over the weekend. He'd agreed. He'd thought she was going away for a weekend and would be back Sunday. He'd been checking on Archie for 9 days. She'd asked him to check in on Archie over the weekend. She knew she would be gone. She planned for it specifically. She made arrangements for her dog. And then she left without her phone and without her cardigan and submitted a resignation email at 11:23 p.m. on a Friday night. I stood in that car park with Priya for 20 minutes, and we said the thing out loud that I had been refusing to say for 8 days. I went back to the office. Craig was at his desk. He was on his work phone, turned towards his screen, fingers moving on his keyboard, a person in the middle of a productive afternoon. I sat down at my desk. I pulled up my notes document. I'd been keeping notes. I told you about the margins of my notebook, but I'd also been keeping a document, time-stamped entries, specific and factual, no interpretation, just what I observed and when. I opened it and added the phone, the time of last use, the 96-minute gap, the fact that it had been in the lost and found basket, which is in a common area accessible to everyone, including Craig, who has been in this office for 7 years and knows where every common area basket is. I need to be careful here about what I am and am not saying. What I am saying is what I know. I saw Craig at Jenna's desk at 6:30 p.m. on Friday. Her phone was last used at 9:47 p.m. Her phone was in the lost and found basket. Her neighbor was asked on Thursday to look in on her dog over the weekend. She resigned at 11:23 p.m. She has not come back for her phone, or her cardigan, or her plant, or her promotion materials. I had her promotion materials on my computer. I had been meaning to send them back to her with my notes. I opened the file that afternoon. 2 months of work, the portfolio section, the case studies, the section titled Career Objectives, where she had written, in the careful way she had with formal writing, about what she wanted the next 5 years to look like. I closed the file. I could not read it. There is a thing that happened 8 months ago that I did not understand at the time, and that I understand now in a way that is one of the more costly understandings of my life. It was a Tuesday in March. We went to the sandwich place around the corner, the one with the small tables and the window that looks out onto the alley, which sounds grim but is actually quite nice because the light comes in at an angle in the afternoon, and it's warm and it smells like good bread. We had been working together on a precursor to the Henderson account, smaller proof of concept work, and we were talking about the work, and I noticed something in how Jenna talked about Craig that was different from how she usually talked about colleagues. The way she usually talked about colleagues was direct and sometimes impatient and often funny. The way she talked about Craig that afternoon was careful, not hostile, not romantic, which would have had a different quality entirely. Careful. The way you talk about something you have been thinking about how to talk about for a while. I asked if everything was okay with the project. She said Craig just had his way of doing things and she was figuring out how to work with him. I pushed. Gently, I thought. I asked if his way of doing things caused her problems. She said, "It's fine, I'm handling it." She said it with the flat certainty of someone who has decided how to feel about a thing and does not want the decision reopened. I let it go. I changed the subject. We talked about other things, easy things, the kind of conversation that is pleasant and costs nothing. And we split the bill and went back to the office, and I filed it as, Craig is a difficult colleague. Jenna is managing it, not my business. She said she's handling it. She's handling it. I'm handling it. She was telling me something that she did not know how to say directly, and I heard it and translated it into something I could comfortably put down. And I put it down and went back to my afternoon, and I did not pick it up again for 8 months until I was standing in a car park, being told about an apartment with clothes still in the wardrobe and a dog being cared for by a neighbor who had thought he was doing a weekend favor. On day 10, I was in the bathroom, not the single occupancy one downstairs, the main women's bathroom on our floor, which has a lock on the outer door that you can turn from the inside, and which I turned. It was 2 in the afternoon. I had been holding myself together for 9 days with the specific effort of a person who is keeping everything functional on the outside, because the alternative is not usable, and I needed 4 minutes in a room with a locked door. I sat on the closed lid of the end stall, and I thought about Friday evening. I thought about the glass partition in the elevator lobby, and Jenna at her desk, and Craig's hand on the partition wall next to her monitor, and the elevator arriving and me getting in. I thought about the drive home and what I made for dinner. Pasta, I think. I'm not certain. Something quick. And whatever I watched on television and going to sleep. I thought about all of Saturday and all of Sunday, during which I did not once think about Jenna or Craig or an office building on a Friday evening. Not once. 60 hours of not thinking about it. I had the last confirmed sighting of Jenna alive. I need to say that sentence slowly. I had the last confirmed sighting of Jenna alive, and I used it for nothing for 60 hours. And those 60 hours are gone, and I cannot recover them, and I cannot find an angle from which that fact is something other than what it is. I am not saying that those 60 hours determined anything. I am not saying that what I saw was enough information to act on, and that I was wrong not to act on it. I am saying, I heard, I'm handling it. And I let it go. I got in an elevator. I did not look back through the glass. I went home. I am saying that the specific comfort of not knowing something and not seeking to know it is something I had for 60 hours, and I spent it. And Jenna's plant was on her desk, slightly too dry because no one had watered it correctly in 9 days, and her dog had been with the downstairs neighbor for 9 days when the downstairs neighbor had agreed to a weekend. And the detective on the missing persons case had my name in a file because Priya had given it to her and she had called me that morning to set up a meeting. I sat in that bathroom for 7 minutes. I counted them on my watch, the old analog one I wear because I like the sound of it. Tick, tick, something grounded and regular. Then I washed my face with cold water. Then I unlocked the door. Then I went back to the office. I picked up Jenna's plant from her desk. I carried it to my desk and put it in the corner, where the light was better. I found the watering schedule she'd written in a post-it that was still stuck to the underside of the pot. She had written a watering schedule on a post-it note and stuck it to the underside of the pot, which was so entirely Jenna that I had to look away for a moment. Every 3 days, a small amount. Missed the leaves on Thursdays. I followed the schedule. I watered the plant. Then I sat down and called the detective. Her name was Adrienne Chen, the detective. She had the voice of someone who has heard a lot of things and has calibrated her reactions accordingly, so that nothing in her voice tells you whether what you are saying surprises her or not, which is useful when you are trying to figure out how seriously someone is taking you. She was taking me seriously. I could tell by the questions she asked. Specific, sequential, building on each other, not the questions of someone who is managing a person they think is being hysterical, but the questions of someone who is constructing a timeline and needs the right dimensions for each piece. I gave her everything: the Friday sighting, the timestamp from the phone, the lost and found basket, the Thursday phone call and the 2-hour absence, the lunch 8 months ago, and what Jenna had said about Craig and how I had filed it. I gave her my notes document, which I read out to her and then emailed. I told her about the promotion materials, and the party popper emoji, and the Tuesday lunch plans, and the cardigan. At one point she asked me, "In the time you worked with Jenna, did she ever tell you directly that she had a problem with Craig Patterson?" I said, "She told me she was handling it." Detective Chen said, "And in retrospect, what do you think she meant by that?" I said, "I think she meant that something was wrong and she was managing it alone and she had decided not to say more. I think I was someone she trusted enough to tell that much to, and not enough to tell the rest. Or she didn't know how to tell the rest. Or she thought if she said the rest, it would become real in a way she wasn't ready for." Detective Chen said, "That's helpful." And then she said something that I've thought about a lot since. People say, "I'm handling it," when the situation has gotten past the point where asking for help feels like an option. It's not about trust. It's about the particular calculus of feeling too far in. Too far in. She asked me to continue normally at work while her team assessed the information. She used the phrase, "continue normally," and I understood it to mean, do not change your behavior around Craig Patterson. Do not indicate that you have spoken with us. Go to work and sit 12 feet from this man and be normal about it until we are in a position to do something useful with what you've given us. I said I understood. I meant, I'll try. The next morning was Thursday. Craig came in with a box of donuts. He set them on the communal table in the kitchen with the easy generosity of a person who does things like this regularly, which he does. It is part of the texture of his presence in this office, the donuts and the fantasy football league, and the way he remembers everyone's coffee order. He organized a team lunch for Friday and sent the calendar invite to everyone, and I accepted it because declining it for no reason was not normal behavior, and I was committed to normal behavior. He came to my desk at around 11. He stood where I could see him directly. I had positioned my monitor slightly so that Craig's desk was within my peripheral vision at all times. I had been doing this since day one without fully articulating it as a strategy. And he said, "Are you doing okay? You've seemed a bit distracted this week." I said, "Just a lot on." He said, "I hear that. This time of year." He paused in the way of a person making space for a conversation, if a conversation was wanted. He said, "Let me know if you need anything, yeah?" I said, "Thank you, Craig." I watched his face when I said it. I watched for something that flickered or shifted or went carefully blank. There was nothing. He was warm and easy and entirely himself. The 7-year Craig Patterson who everyone likes. The person HR sends to talk down difficult situations. The person who brings donuts. Either the warmth was genuine, a man entirely unburdened by anything, who had nothing to do with Jenna's disappearance and was simply being collegial to a colleague who seemed distracted. Or it was the most functional performance of normalcy I had ever seen at close range. Both options were something I needed to keep in my body without showing in my face. I said, "Thank you, Craig," and I meant, I have given a detective your name and your timeline and your Thursday absence and the note I made in the margin of my notebook, and I am sitting here eating a donut from your box and waiting for something I cannot control to reach some kind of conclusion, and I do not know when that will happen. And until it does, I am going to smile at you and seem distracted and accept your concern and keep a plant on my desk that belongs to the person you were the last to see on a Friday night. That is what knowing something you cannot use costs. It costs exactly that. I found the elevator log on day 12. This is important and I want to get it right. The building has a keycard system. You need a keycard to access the floor from the stairwell, but not from the elevator lobby. The elevator lobby is controlled by a lobby-level security system. The building management keeps a log of keycard activity. I knew this because 3 years ago there had been a security incident, a laptop stolen from reception, and management had pulled the keycard logs to track who was in the building that evening. I had been one of the people whose card was logged. I remembered the process. I submitted a written request to the building manager, citing a personal concern about building security, true, if oblique, and asking for the elevator log and keycard log for the 4th floor on the Friday in question, between the hours of 6 p.m. and midnight. I requested it in writing and sent a copy to Detective Chen before I sent it to the building manager. The building manager came back to me within a day, a little uncertain about the request, but not refusing it, asking for clarification. I gave the clarification. I mentioned that I had been in contact with a detective regarding a missing persons investigation, which I had authorization from Detective Chen to disclose. The building manager said he'd get back to me. He got back to me on day 14 with the log. My keycard showed, exit from the 4th floor elevator lobby at 6:31 p.m. This confirmed what I already knew. The rest of the log was what mattered. Jenna's keycard, active in the building until 9:51 p.m., not 9:47 to 9:51, 4 minutes after the last phone activity. Active means she used her card to do something at 9:51 p.m. The specific entry in the log was the stairwell door on the 4th floor. She used her keycard to access the 4th floor stairwell at 9:51 p.m. Craig's keycard, active in the building until 11:14 p.m. His card was used at the lobby-level exit at 11:14 p.m. 96 minutes ago, I had been thinking about the gap between 9:47 and 11:23. This is now a different kind of gap. There is no stairwell camera on each landing, only at the bottom floor exit. I don't know what is on that camera. The detective does. I gave her the elevator log on day 14 and she said, "This is useful." And she said it in the calibrated voice that tells you nothing about how useful it actually is. What I know, Jenna used the stairwell at 9:51 p.m. Craig left the building at 11:14 p.m. The resignation email was sent at 11:23 p.m. Her phone was in the lost and found basket. What I do not know, what happened in the stairwell? What happened between 9:51 and whatever came after? Whether the stairwell camera at the bottom exit recorded anything that connects these timestamps into a sequence that is what I think it is. I have given everything I have to Detective Chen. I am not a detective. I am a content strategist who does audience behavior analysis, and I have applied that skill set in the worst possible context, to the best of my ability. And now I have to let the people with actual investigative authority take it from here. That is the correct position to hold, and I am telling you because it does not feel as settled as I am making it sound. I handed in my resignation on a Thursday morning. I want to be precise about the sequence. I had already accepted another position. I had been quietly looking since day 3 because I understood from day 3 that regardless of how this resolved, I could not stay in this office for the long term. The other position came through on a Wednesday. I gave notice on Thursday. I gave my final statement to Detective Chen on Thursday afternoon, which included everything I've told you and the elevator log and the physical phone itself, which I had been carrying in my bag for 12 days in a Ziploc freezer bag because some instinct told me not to handle it more than I already had. I cleaned out my desk on a Friday, my last Friday in that office. The things on my desk were not very many. I have never been a desk decorator. I don't have photos or plants or objects that accumulate around the workstation over time. I have my notebook, my pens, a charger, and whatever papers are currently active. Those went in the bag quickly. I opened the bottom drawer for the last pass and found, at the back, a cardigan I had brought in 2 or maybe 3 winters ago for cold days, and then forgotten about. Dark green. I hadn't worn it in the office in over a year. I took it out and held it for a moment. It still had the shape of being folded the way I fold things, not the neat 3-fold that Diana from HR had used, just a rough fold in half, the way you do something quickly. I put it in my bag. I took Jenna's plant. I did not look at Craig's desk when I walked out. This was a choice. I had thought about what I wanted my last moment in that office to be, and I decided it was not going to be his face at his desk being normal, which is what it would have been if I had looked. So I didn't look. I carried the plant in both hands because the pot was slightly too big to carry one-handed comfortably, and I walked to the elevator lobby, and I pressed the button, and I waited. The elevator came. I got in. This time, I did not look back through the glass partition. 3 months later, I got a call from Detective Chen. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon, the light going thin and sideways the way it does in November. I was at my new desk in my new office, which is a different building with different light and different people and a slightly different coffee smell. She told me they had found Jenna. There's a pause I want to give you here. Let it sit. You understand from the pause what found means in this context. I understood from the pause in her voice, from the specific way the words sat in the sentence, without any other words coming quickly after it. They found her. Craig Patterson was arrested 11 days after that call. That is all I am going to say about that. What I can tell you is, I have her plant, the succulent. It is on my desk in the new office, and it is alive, which required figuring out the post-it note schedule and following it correctly. Every 3 days, small amount, miss the leaves on Thursdays. It turns out what it needed was just a little attention on a reliable schedule. Not complicated, just consistent. Her promotion materials are still on my computer. I have not deleted them. I have tried twice and I could not do it. They are in a folder and the folder has her name on it, and at some point I will know what the right thing to do with them is, and until then, they will stay where they are. There is a thing I will not know. I said it to you earlier, and I want to say it clearly now so that we're both holding the same shape of it. The 96 minutes between 9:47 and 11:23, between her phone going dark and the resignation arriving in Diana's inbox. The investigation gave me some of what is in those 96 minutes, not all of it. There are things in that gap between what can be proven and what happened that will remain in the gap. The detective told me this directly when I asked. She said, "There are things we know and things we can prove, and those are not always the same set. I have decided to live with the gap. I have not decided it cheerfully. I decided it the way you decide something when not deciding it is also a decision, and the gap is real and permanent, and not something I can change by not accepting it. So I accepted it. It's not peace exactly. It's closer to, this is the shape of it, and the shape doesn't become a different shape because I keep pressing on it. I'm handling it," she said. I believed her. I put it down. I went back to my afternoon. That's the thing that stays with me. Not the cardigan, not the phone, not the plant that needed a specific amount of water on a specific schedule. The thing that stays is the sandwich place in March, the light coming in sideways through the window onto the alley, and Jenna's face doing the thing it always did, emoting directly, no filter, and the careful quality in her voice when she said those words, and me hearing them and deciding they meant less than they did. I heard it. I knew something was wrong, and I let the knowing be small enough to put down. That's the open thread, the one that doesn't close. I don't think it's supposed to.